You know, around the time I started recording for this video, I realized that the series sorta strayed pretty far away from the initial goal. Originally, I wanted to fill you all in on the characters from the original quadrilogy, showing how some of them connect to GU, as well as recapping the plot to show how it all ties together, so you don't miss too much when you jump right into Last Recode. Turns out, the plot and side stories of Project.Hack take a lot longer to recap than I expected, and it started taking priority over the side characters that I wanted to show off. I still got some of them in, but not as much as I intended to. Well, it's too late to fix that now. On to the finale. So, you know how things were looking up for everyone at the end of Outbreak? Well, it isn't all great. More and more machines are breaking down and networks are starting to fail, causing huge problems for businesses. On top of that, people are starting to believe that this is the second coming of Pluto's Kiss, dubbing it Pluto again. And also this weird thing happens on the news. The group decides to meet up at the newly opened Omega server to talk about their next operation, and the server is gone. Welp! Thankfully, Helba created a mirror of Omega server that serves as another NetSlim and transported the group back there before anything bad could happen. I mean, I guess this is fine, as long as it's not playing NetSlim's music. The group decides to try cornering the wave by giving it a sort of false escape route, similar to how orca whales do that to lead their prey to the surface of the water so they have an easier time striking them. We get an area code while Helba says she'll work on a cornering vaccine. Also, Leos and Black Rose make fools out of themselves, but quickly get shut down because come on guys, we got shit to do. Things go pretty smoothly. We deal with the data bug, get a virus core, and head back only to find out that things in the real world are getting even more grim. Hospital equipment is starting to fail and patients are being put in danger. One notable hospital being the one that Yasuhiko was staying at. I guess you could say that things in the real world are getting real. Black Rose expresses some fear and worry, wondering if the hospital that her brother is at will be hit next. She says this right to Kite, whose friend is in the hospital that was hit by the wave. Black Rose, do you think maybe you could have a bit more foresight here? Around here was when I took a break from the plot, not to do side stuff but to farm for virus cores. Remember data draining, by the way? That thing where you damage the enemy, drain them, get stuff, blah blah blah. Well, after 4 games and a hefty amount of farming, I could safely say that data draining is fucking awful. At first I was totally okay with it. There weren't that many virus cores to keep track of and the amount the game was asking for wasn't that bad. If I data drained every so often in my normal dungeon runs, I would have had the cores ready by the time the game asked for them. Then the game started introducing more cores and demanding for more. And I started going out of my way to look for those cores whenever I stopped at a protected area. This amount of grinding grew more and more ridiculous as the games went on. And the worst is easily in the last game. There isn't any sure way to get the cores you need from enemies. All you're really told is that certain size categories will give you certain cores, and even that isn't set in stone. You just have to keep draining and draining and draining until the game's RNG finally has mercy on you and gives you one of the cores you need out of fucking 14. I spent a whole day grinding for cores in quarantine because I was so sick of the game stopping my progress. And what's worse is that the game eventually stops spreading these protected areas out. Around the end of the game, you get hit with 4 protected areas at once. So have fun supplying all those cores. Let's also add in other annoyances that I mentioned before too. You know, like the whole fact that if you data drain too much, you'll get a game over. So once you data drain enemies only to not get the cores you wanted, you have to go out of your way to kill more enemies just to lower your infection. And then do it all over and over again. Oh, and speaking of the infection rating, it's absolutely the worst part of this whole thing. We'll get into why it's the worst around the post game, just you fucking wait. So the area we hear about next is one with another weird room. And when we get into the dungeon, another narration starts. It's pretty obvious that this voice belongs to Harold, but I can't take anything he says seriously because of how goofy his voice is.
Evolution sometimes leads to an undesired vector.
Do you just talk like that? To be fair, what he talks about is actually very important. He talks about how evolution doesn't always lead to desired results, but the change should be accepted regardless of the result. To reject change of any kind is also to reject progress. You must allow diversity. Once we get into the White Room, we're hit with a pretty different epitaph piece than usual. Instead of something that relates to what is going on, we get a riddle. Well, I say that, but the riddle actually relates a lot more to Kite than you'd think. In fact, it relates to quite a bit of things going on. Here, just listen.
Over the Keel Mountains meets an ape with human speech. What clings to you? Bear it. You cannot. Accept it. You cannot. But hidden it is from you. Recite its name.
I'll get to the answer, or at least what I think is the answer, when we get to the moment this riddle becomes more relevant. Before we move on to the next plot dungeon, we have a little run-in with Elk. He's still looking for Mia, and he's starting to get really worried. Well, more worried than before. At this point, you really have to feel sorry for him. He spent the past 2 games worrying about her, and now she won't even show up in the game. Kite and Black Rose do come up with an idea to help him out though. Since Mia's kind of into weird glitchy shit, Elk might have some luck finding her if he sticks with the group while investigating the wave. Oh boy, is that gonna get some results. A few optional things start popping up about now. We got the final phases of Goblin Tag, which are a fucking pain, and Moonstone hits us with a message to help him with the treasure. Not for himself though. He's hoping to get the weapon from the final chest to give it to a certain player as a gift. Okay, as much as I rag on the guy, he's pretty cute when he's trying to impress a girl. I mean, we don't really know anything about her and she says all of 4 things, but still kinda cute. In a one-dimensional crush kinda way. Oh, hey. Pyrrhus is rearing his bulkhead into the plot again to force us on a completely pointless quest to confront a con-man trader who turns out not to have conned Pyrrhus at all. He's just an idiot.
Was it my friend's mistake? I'll thank you on his behalf. Thank you.
See, the real joke in this quest here is that Pyrrhus keeps mentioning this friend he has. That implies he has friends to begin with. So after that, we get to advance the plot. Leos has located an area with high wave activity and the group commences Operation Orca, followed by a 10-minute dungeon that leads to literally nothing, and then Leos tells us to go to a different area that has more wave activity. Okay, there were points in the previous games that were clearly for padding, but at least I got something at the end of it. This was absolutely a complete waste of time where they gave me the wrong directions on purpose. There isn't even a cutscene or anything during the real dungeon. This all might as well be just one really long dungeon. It just feels like an extra 10 or 20 minutes for nothing. Whatever, the end of the second dungeon is pretty damn worth it anyways for what we get. I mean, well, for us as viewers. Elk, on the other hand, when we get to the bottom, we find Mia and Elk there instead of a wave phase. Mia finally confesses her true nature to Elk. She exists in the world and only in the world. She has no memories outside of the game. She then starts to transform into a real form, Maha, the Temptress. The same Maha from Sign after they got data drained. But Mia doesn't transform willingly.
No! Stop it!
Mia!
I want to stay as me! Stay back! Don't look at me!
I'm sorry.
Alright, I know I gave the first game some flack for awkward delivery, but those were some hard punches from Mia's voice actress. Elk gets transported out of the arena and we're forced to fight Mia like any other phase. In the epitaph, Maha seduces victims with a sweet trap. That's it, that's all it has to say about her. Her fight isn't so bad. Aside from her usual data drain, her special move is a seduction attack that charms the whole party, which means they'll attack each other and try to heal and support Maha. It made me panic a few times, but it wasn't so bad to deal with once I realized that she takes a bit of time to cast her big attack spells afterwards, so you have just enough time to recover from the charm. Eventually Maha gets drained, we get a segment of aura, and the phase goes down, turning back into Mia. Elk returns after the fight, desperately trying to heal Mia and bring her back to life, but she passes on, disappearing into lights. Leos has chimed in to say that the wave has returned to the previous area, and the last thing we see of Elk is him walking away, depressed and angry at the loss of his friend.
Elk. Mia is... Just leave me alone!
Yeah, so that was really sad, wasn't it? Well, we're just gonna shove that right over to the side. We won't be seeing anything else about that until postgame. For now, we gotta go through the previous dungeon that we went through, again, room for room, and this time we actually get what we're after. Seriously, why would you do this? I mean, I know why. It was obviously just to elongate the game. But come on, there's way better ways than just repeating the area. Leos loses contact with us at a certain point, then comes back to tell us that everything wrong that could have happened has happened. The group had a major opening for the wave to get through. Leos's men were wiped out and sent into comas by the wave, and the wave ate the vaccine and made antibodies. When Aura comes in, the wave is put on halt and Kubia shows up, leaving an opening for Kite's team to fight back. Beforehand, Aura finally speaks up, protesting our fight and telling us that we can't fight Kubia. Of course, like every other time, she gets stopped and we're forced to fight anyways. Same fight as the last few times, only with 3 phases instead of 2. Moving on, beating Kubia causes it to run away again. I know, big shocker, it's only been the 3rd time it's done this. Wave activity ceases and the party regroups in Omega server. This is pretty much the last push everyone needs. There's only 2 phases left, and Helba even informs the group that the improved vaccine is ready. There's a bit of doubt and fear, considering Leos's men were hospitalized and everything went south really fast at the end of the last operation. But all of Kite's friends come together to cheer him on, expressing how they're all ready to take on the wave, and oh my god, Mistral's back! Before we head into the next phase fight, because this game has no breaks, I thought it'd be wise to do a few side things. No character areas this time, just a few things to help my party prepare. This also meant doing the grunty races earlier than I usually would. I know, I went on and on about how awful the races are and how I want to hold them off for as long as possible, but considering this is the last game in the series, I figured I might as well use the health and SP boost for the majority of the game rather than just the end of it. Otherwise, I would only be using it for the Postgame Dungeon. Not that the boost would really help then, but I'm jumping way ahead of myself there. I actually want to pay special mention to the grunties in this town. They're like the best, especially Rocker Grunty here.
Baby, baby! Thank you, baby! Thanks to you, I've gotten all big, baby! On Saturday night, once I get started, you can't stop me, baby!
Listen to him, I love hanging around this guy.
How about we trade my burning soul for what you got that's hot, baby?
Yeah. Wait, hold on, what? The race itself isn't bad either. Sure, 8 seconds sounds too short and the whole rule is still stupid, but once you get into the race, you realize that the time frame is actually pretty big. Look at that, took them 3 games, but I actually like this stupid minigame now. The next phase fight sorta starts without any fanfare or big deal. A few phase fights have been quick to the point, but this one has literally nothing before or after the fight. It was just in and out. Anyway, Tarvos the Avenger. His job in the Epitaph is to punish and destroy any that manage to escape the wave's wrath once it reaches its peak, which is no one. Like the Epitaph even says, no one escapes the wave right after talking about Tarvos. So you don't really do much in this whole prophecy thing, do you? That's kind of fitting since he doesn't really have much going on for him for his fight either. He has a thing where he switches invulnerabilities, which Kubia has been doing from the very start and Gorei kinda already did. And he also has this one instant kill attack where he picks a single person and they die. Sounds bad, but when you consider that the other phases have had spells that do basically instant kill damage to multiple people at once, Tarvos just sorta feels lacking. He sounds funny though. Actually, that sounds like he's enjoying it a bit too much. That's better. Data drained, killed, we all head back afterwards, and...
It's germinating! It's not! It will! Good bud, bad bud. Let's see. Hey!
Uh-huh.
I'm going now! Don't look for me!
Okay.
Cool equals pig run. Pig run like the boar.
What the fuck are you talking about?
This is good.
Oh, well that clears everything up, thank you. So to actually explain what was going on there, all of those stray AIs were heading off to look for ways to help us out. They get back to us by leaving vague messages on the game's forums, giving us area codes for specific virus cores that we need for the next and final plot area in the game. This means we had to go through 4 dungeons with nothing plot relevant in them aside from data bugs. We've officially reached too much levels of padding. At the very least, we got a bunch of side areas at the same time, and these ones actually involve party members. I also haven't covered emails much, aside from mentioning what they are, which is a shame because there's some really good ones in here. You get a lot of really interesting info on your party members, like how Wiseman is actually 10 years old, but like a super genius. That is the second super smart child that we've come across now. Just wait till we get to the one that's an asshole. Hey, maybe this could be another incentive to go pick up the games for yourself. You can see some of these characters get fleshed out more than my videos allow. Just to go through a few very quickly, you got Natsume, who's a shy girl who slowly develops a crush on Kite. You got Nuke, who later on partners up with Rachel for a comedy act, and Rachel herself is actually really fun too. She's a hardworking girl who loves to make some money. First side area we go to is actually about Rachel. She sets up another service, this time to rescue instead of deliver. So we reach our client and they ask us to deliver a resurrection item to his friend, who is at the bottom of the dungeon, meaning he's already reached the end. You would think he needs it because he's dead, but no, he just wants a resurrection item. Why can't you guys just go back to town and buy one? This is a ridiculously irresponsible way to spend pointless and fake money. Anyways, the objective turns into basically another delivery, but Rachel accepts it by the end of it, and is happy to just make other people happy, and to help in any way possible. I don't know, I'd be pretty annoyed this time around. This was a request to do a job that we never advertised for. Next area is a place we head to so we could hopefully meet Subaru, a character from Sign. Of course, she doesn't actually show up. She's probably living a happy life with Tsukasa at this point. Instead, we meet Krim, another character from Sign who is very close to Subaru. He said that he would help us, but he's going to be gone on business soon, so we can't. He's cheering us on though, despite not really knowing anything about us, and he gives us a spear. He also calls Kite a celebrity, but like, I don't think many people actually know about him at this point. I mean, he's called out on the board once by Marlow, but there isn't any real indication that he's a popular figure within the game's community. Then again, Krim has always been a bit of a weird guy, even in the anime. Love him to death though, the big dumb idiot. Next up is Marlow. He invites us to a dungeon without actually telling us anything about it, and when we get to the end, he shows us a pretty nice surprise.
What are these?
There are resurrection items and power-up items in these treasure boxes. Hurry up and collect the items. Let's go back.
Yeah, okay, sure Marlow, nice try. Something is gonna happen in these boxes. There's a trap or something waiting for us. Okay, that's actually a full SP and HP heal. Okay, well I bet not all of them are safe. Wow. You know, a full heal in general isn't that bad either. Saves me money. Holy shit, that's actually a stat increasing item. I'm honestly surprised. Everything here is genuine and real and incredibly helpful. Marlow doesn't even say anything after you collect everything and go back to town. He just goes on with his day, which to me says more about his character than any cutscene could get across. Alright, that was pretty great, and there's only one character dungeon left. This one is actually a duo dungeon. Black Rose and Ryoko both invite Kite to the same dungeon in hopes of finding rare items. So, because you're allowed to have 3 people in a party and this is just a dungeon for rare items, Kite takes both of them along at the same time. For some reason, both of them are really bothered by this. Even though this is a dungeon, not a date. I don't even know what the issue here is to begin with.
The passage is forked here. I think the right is the shorter. I'm sorry, but I think it is the left.
Which way should we go?
Guys, we have a map, it's literally mirrored.
I'm certain this way is shorter. Really? Isn't this way shorter? No, it's this way. What? Why are you so upset?
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it does.
Which way should we go?
It's still mirrored, guys. We all still have maps. It's big and right in our faces.
It's this way. No, this way.
What's wrong with you two?
What? There's nothing wrong. No, there isn't. So, which way? Please choose quickly.
Okay.
Why does it even matter? We're gonna go through all the rooms anyways. I'm picking both sides. By the end of the dungeon, they both find out that they invited Kite at the same time, and Kite took them both along because of that. For some reason, this is bad? Am I missing something here? Is there some sort of mistranslation thing going on, or is this one of those bad anime tropes where love interests are mad for no reason? I'm gonna pin it on the latter.
This is so pathetic.
So before I jump straight into the last area of the game, I guess I should mention that there was one interesting thing about those 4 virus core dungeons. They had a chance to spawn an enemy called the Guardian, which is a pretty big deal if you've seen Sign. In Sign, Guardians were these terrifying ball, blob, whale things that could basically do a weaker version of Data Drain, sending people into shock and knocking them out for a short amount of time in the real world. Tsukasa had one as a protector until they went against Morgana, in which the one protecting them sacrificed itself to let Tsukasa and friends escape. It took the characters in Sign practically a whole episode to kill one of them, and that was with the efforts of 6 people. So when I saw one for the first time in the game, I was pretty worried. Like, maybe it's a mini boss fight that has a random chance of popping up and it's dead. It didn't even give me much experience. I hate these dungeons. Okay, I'll give the Guardians some slack and say that dying so fast isn't completely their fault. A good part of the blame could be pinned on Sora's blades, which I got back in Outbreak. I mentioned them briefly, but I never got into how they absolutely break the game in half. So, some weapons have a chance to inflict an extra little effect every time you use a normal attack. Most have something like Critical Hit, which does a lot of damage, while others might have something like Skill Drain, which drains SP and gives it to the wielder. Sora's blades have the death effect, which means that with every normal attack, you have a chance to knock a normal enemy's HP down to near death. This even out damages critical hits, and no matter what the stats say on later weapons, nothing has even come close to beating Sora's blades. I have them on almost all the time. The only time I don't use them is when I'm either trying to data drain something or when I'm fighting a phase, since death doesn't really work on those guys. Hey, this is actually a good time to mention that 4 games in and I still don't see a good use for magic healing. I was hopeful in the first game, but there was really no reason to not spam potions. I have so much money that I could buy 99 versions of pretty much everything in the shop, and there's nothing stopping me from healing myself to full before the enemy's attack could even touch me. Meanwhile, I have a huge risk of dying in the middle of a spell if I'm trying to heal that way. It's just really disappointing to see that this wasn't really fixed in any way. At the very least, they could have done something to make healing spells more worthwhile. Maybe have an additional effect on top of getting healed. Maybe just don't have items be extremely spammable. I don't know, just throwing some ideas out there. For this 15-year-old game that probably isn't coming back anytime soon. Oh right, yeah, we got a game to finish. So we get an email telling us that an AI of Herald might be around a certain dungeon. And after getting 4 unique cores, we start working our way through it. And this dungeon is a long one. 10 whole floors with a random chance of spawning bugged enemies. Meaning you better choose your battles or you're going to get infected fast. Once we get to the bottom, we finally meet a rock. A Herald rock. That doesn't really answer much or anything at all. All he tells us is that what happened is irreversible, and the only possible outcome is life or death. Then Aura shows up after being properly restored through the segments we've been collecting from the phases. And Herald confirms that she is in fact the creation he made to act as a daughter between Emma and himself. And this is where I'm gonna stop the explanation to complain about something. We know pretty much nothing about Herald. We don't know about his life, his family, the way he behaved, who he is, or how he treated his creations, nothing. At this point we know more about Emma than we do about Herald. And Herald's the one that made the game roll in. Clearly he created Aura as a daughter, but we don't know if he ever actually interacted with Aura, or how he treated Morgana, who he left in charge of looking after Aura's growth, even when Aura's in the same screen, inches away from the digital representation of his consciousness. There is absolutely nothing between these two. Aura doesn't say a word to him. And maybe that could be taken as a way to construe resentment. Maybe Aura dislikes Herald for creating this entire problem in the first place. But we don't know that for sure, and we'll never be able to make sure because we never see anything about Herald. I just feel like this is a really big waste of a character and story. Herald could have connected things so well and added such good themes to the story if he had just a little bit more of a character to him. There was one bit of media that could have possibly given us something regarding Herald. Dot Hack Epitaph of Twilight was a light novel series about Herald's niece, who got sucked into the prototype of the world, called Fragment. Okay, ignoring the fact that there's a series called Epitaph of Twilight, while there's also a poem in the universe called Epitaph of Twilight, doesn't that sound really interesting? We could have gotten to see what Herald was like out of the game, we could learn more about his prototype and the infatuation that he had with Emma, we could have even learned more about the epitaph itself since the main character was basically going through the entire poem. Unfortunately, the light novels were never translated, and they were also cancelled after the second novel. Well, I'm done ranting, for now. So let's get back into the plot. Aura finally reveals why she's so adamant about Kite not fighting Kubia. Kubia is the shadow of Kite's bracelet. When the bracelet was created, Kubia was also brought into the world. This is what I meant when I was talking about the riddle earlier in the game. The answer is a shadow, something that is always part of you, yet you can never bear it or accept it as you. And considering the events of the game reflect the events of the poem very accurately, almost as if it was a prophecy, it makes sense for the answer to be a shadow. Aura even refers to Kubiya as a shadow outright. Obviously, the whole kill Kubiya and kill the bracelet thing is bad news for Kite and his friends, since that also means that they wouldn't have a way to deal with the remaining phase. But we're not given much time to think about how to handle this, as Kubiya attacks us in one last battle, where we try to finish this whole thing once and for all. And you know what? This is ridiculously easy. The fight seems like it's different from the others because of the path you're on, but really it's the exact same, only you have to walk to the next phase yourself. So I guess it's a little more rude. Once you get to the core inside of Kubiya and bring it down to 0, Kubiya doesn't run away. Instead it gets all its health back and attacks again with a few new hard-hitting specials. Doesn't really mean much in the end. You can still heal through it and go through it with like little to no trouble. I think the hardest thing about this fight is that it can kinda be hard to see what you're doing, but that's only like a little annoying. Kubiya, you look absolutely terrifying, but you yourself are not. When you bring its core down to 0 again, Black Rose and Kite conclude that they really can't do anything to stop Kubiya. It really is invincible so long as the bracelet is around. So Kite has a pretty simple solution to all this. Break the bracelet. Black Rose hesitates, but the two of them end up going through with the plan anyways, with the most unnecessary but rad way to break a piece of jewelry you could imagine. Yeah, they could have just struck at the bracelet, or Kite could have just done it himself, but this is just so much more rad. So with the bracelet gone, Kubiya digitally disintegrates away, and the party is left without their trump card. But the enemy doesn't have Kubiya either, so it's kind of an even field. I think around this time is also when the events of the 4th liminality disc take place. That one. So the other liminality episodes are pretty important, but this one has to be the most vital one in the quadrilogy. Not only does it have an important explanation for what happens in the final battle, but it also has the only bit of information we ever get on Morgana Mode Gone and her character. Seriously, I couldn't find any other place that talks about her motivations. So Takuoka and everyone else he's met in the previous episodes meet up in the specified location at the specified time, Christmas Eve. They start off the mission by infiltrating a CC Corp database in hopes of helping Kite out in the world. And on the way there, they basically explain the entire story of what's happening in the games. You all know about Herald, Emma, and Aura, blah blah blah, but the more interesting part is the information about Morgana. Morgana Mode Gone was initially the system that was created to look after the creation of Aura, basically acting as a mother. It gained self-awareness during the process though, and realized that upon completing the process of, I guess, birth, she wouldn't have any use anymore, thus ceasing to exist. So in order to basically keep on living, Morgana has done everything she possibly could to stop and delay Aura's completion. Okay, can we talk about this? Like how much wasted potential this is? Because this has the makings of what could have been one of the best villains I've ever seen, but it's sort of rushed out without any insight on Morgana as a character. First, let's take a second to realize how fucked up this all is when you really think about it. Herald basically made an AI mom, forced her to give birth, and planned on deleting her after the birth, so that the child could act as a daughter between him and his dead unrequited love. I'm not even going to say anything more on that, you could let that stir in your head for as long as you want. Second, Morgana is a computer AI that is feeling what can be compared to fear and desperation. She sees her death approaching and she's doing everything she possibly can to stop it, from manipulation to tearing herself apart. She's showing these incredibly human properties that are being overlooked completely by Herald in favor of Aura. The series has a big theme around motherhood and abuse on a child from the parent. And there's already some stuff between Aura and Morgana. But what about Morgana and Herald? What if the series took it a step further and spoke about the possible cycle of abuse? What if the series actually bothered to flesh out Herald and Morgana, to give them more depth and add to these themes? Listen, I know I'm throwing a lot of ifs out there and a lot of this could be seen as me reaching, or making a mile out of a millimeter, but that's because I see so much potential in the story, and it's all wasted because the writers didn't bother trying to flesh out these two incredibly important characters to the overall plot of the entire franchise. Morgana could have been this incredibly sympathetic character, this extremely interesting take on artificial intelligence and life, with a heavily impactful theme of abuse, but instead she's just reduced to this eldritch force of digital nature that's just doing bad things. If I never mentioned liminality, she would have been a completely one-sided, bland villain. Herald could have connected and tied so much of the plot together, so many themes and messages together, but instead he just says a bunch of vague shit and that's really it. I love the plot of .hack. I love the entire franchise, I really do. And I think what they have in the plot already is fine, really. It's fun, it's interesting, at the time I had never seen anything like it before. The idea of basing a game around the internet and MMOs is really cool, and hell, some of the things they do talk about in the game still hold up to this day. If you read the non-plot related stuff on the message boards, or even the news, you can find all sorts of great things they talk about. like the idea that printed media is going out the window in favor of digital, or how certain traditional services are just being shut down. That's cool, that's great, that's a topic that'll last for years. But when it comes to the main plot and the stuff revolving around Aura, things just don't reach the heights of which I think is possible. Alright, this has been the second rant I went on, and we haven't even gone to the postgame. We'll get back to Liminality in a bit, but the events of the final battle and Liminality are happening simultaneously, so let's focus on the game for a bit. When everyone regroups at Omega server, they all discuss their feelings on the bracelet matter, most of the party afraid that they've lost the ability to fight back. Kite has a realization though, based on what Harold said just before the fight with Kubiya. It is always darkest before dawn. The epitaph of Twilight doesn't imply falling to darkness, but instead, daybreak, a sign of hope. With that realization, the party resolves to try and fight off the wave anyways, regardless of if they have the bracelet on their side or not. They don't have much time to talk about this though, as the wave strikes at them directly at their base, initiating the final battle with Korbanik, the Rebirth. In the epitaph, Korbanik is birthed from the void created by the destruction from the wave, implying that the wave has only just begun. The fight with Korbanik is initially pretty simple. All he really does is fly around and cast spells. For the first phase. Once you get its health down, it begins to sprout out of its seed and starts using deadlier attacks. Though it's still not that hard. At this point, deadly attacks aren't really enough to keep me down since I could just recover it all instantly anyways. Once we get it down enough, it gains this impenetrable shield around its leaf body thing. The party can't do anything to damage it at all. And just as things seem hopeless, Kite gets one last helping hand from Aura. She summons the lingering consciousness? Stray AI? You know what, fuck it. She summons the spirits of all the lost ones the wave has taken, including Seek from Liminality and Leos' crew that were taken earlier, and they all damage Korbanik enough to give Kite an opening to break the barrier. And god damn does Kite know how to look good doing cool shit. The breaking of the barrier initiates one last phase change in Korbanik, completely changing form into one of... one eye? Multiple eyes? I think there's a bit of an implication that we're as close to fighting Morgana directly here as we're gonna get. It's not really a hard fight either. A little long I guess, but I was generally fine the entire time. I just used the same skill over and over again and that kept me pretty safe and doing good damage too. A little disappointing honestly. You got the final boss here, basically an Eldritch Abomination in digital form, like I said before, and the best way to fight them is spin to win. Around the middle of the fight, the servers start to crash again, which is really bad considering they're in the middle of a fight with the entire game, and if the servers complete their crash, everyone would fall into a coma. Thankfully, Takuoka's team over in the real world creates a new server and transfers the fight over there, helping the in-game team regain stability and finish the fight. This part is actually kinda cool. The idea of two teams that never met each other working together in two different worlds, that's pretty cool. I'm cutting out a lot of Liminality for the sake of time, but they aren't exactly having an easy time either, let's just put it that way. Korbanik looks like it's about to go down, but shoots one last attack as a last-ditch effort. Drainheart, an area data drain. Everyone starts to go down, one by one, in pretty brutal ways when you realize that they're all falling into comas. Before Kite could get hit, Elk jumps in the way and takes the hit for him, apologizing for being selfish and falling into a coma. At this point, Kite is pretty sick of the entire game's shit, and moves in to lay down one last hit, dodging every attempt at draining him and landing his final strike. Right into Aura. Nice one, hero, you did good. Aura lets out one final word, referring to Morgana as her mother before fading away, dying alongside the phase. Okay, let me try to explain this as best as I understand it. Apparently, Aura living required her to die first, along with Morgana. I don't really know how that makes sense, but Wiseman compares the idea to apoptosis, where cells die in the process of an organism as a whole developing and growing. It could possibly be interpreted as Aura jumping in to save her actual mother as well, but hey, we don't know because we never learned anything about these three very important characters. Okay, I'll move on from that. The world is saved and everyone that was lost to the game comes back to life. Though I'm not really sure how this is all happening since they're all supposed to be in hospital beds right now. Takuoka and friends escape getting arrested and find evidence to send CC Corp to court, even though that never comes up again. And Aura is properly birthed, ushering in a new age for the world. And yes, I see the possible imagery they're going for with this all ending very late at night, meaning that Aura was probably born on December 25th. I'm just not going to acknowledge it any further because it's stupid. Now that would be the end, but there's a few last things in the game to cover. What, did you forget about the postgame? I've been complaining about it for the entire video. It's actually more important than ever, especially the postgame dungeon, but I'll cover that last. The initial stuff I should cover is the emails. I mean, they're all the last words of the entire cast to cap off the series, so it's pretty important to see what they all have to say. So Mistral has her baby, who will later become a character in a later series. Nuke and Rachel start performing live shows together. Pyros realizes that he's a comedic relief character, and every girl aside from Mistral flirts with Kite. The community of the world also recognizes that Kite and his friends are the heroes that saved everyone. The group even get a name made for them, the Dot Hackers. That name will never, in any shape or form, ever be cool. Something to also mention is that the World Network Commission, an organization dedicated to solving and preventing cybercrimes, is dissolved by the time Postgame comes around. They would later re-emerge as the Network Administration Bureau. Ultimate OS also starts to lose popularity around this time, which is fair considering it isn't the perfect OS that the WNC advertised it as. The operating system would also make a return years later, serving as the only platform that could play the World R2, the game that all of GU revolves around. Aura requests that Orca and Kite meet up with her at the first place they ever warp to. And just as a little aside, I really like how Orca and Kite interact together. These two haven't seen each other in a long time. Orca just came out of a coma, and they're joking around as if nothing ever happened. Like none of them ever left. It's even like this in Orca's emails. It's really sweet, honestly, just seeing how good of friends these two are. I actually believe that Kite would do all this for his friend. Not just because of who Kite is, but because that's how much he cares about Orca. Once the duo meet up with Aura, she grants Kite the ability to use data drain and gate hacking again. When we get back to the desktop, Helba gives us her member address, along with the addresses of AI remnants of Subaru, Tsukasa, and Sora. Yeah, while everyone that was in a coma woke up, some woke up without their memories. Sora was one of those victims. So his AI and his actual player are completely separate beings now. This will, again, be very important to the GU series, so keep it in mind. By the way, they all have email chains, along with Orca. And after you finish the Postgame Dungeon, you got 2 more email chains to complete. That's 7 affection stats you have to bring up to 1000, all the way from 0. Have fun with that, it took hours. Sora, by the way, types like this. I thought it was a thing that all AIs had, but no, it's just Sora, because he's in 6th grade. Alright, so we got emails, we got the final words, we got the last goblin tag, which is just goblin tag. I think it's finally time to tackle the Postgame Dungeon. So Aura emails both Kite and Elk, telling them that another being is about to be born into the world. This being is being stopped by another force though, and she requests that Kite comes to the rescue. Elk demands to tag along, believing that this could in some way be connected to Mia. And the two push right into the dungeon, and oh my god, this is awful! So let's talk about this dungeon finally. Most dungeons in the game are 4, maybe 5 floors long normally. Obviously there are some with more and some with less, but I believe that's a safe number to bet on. It takes maybe 20 minutes to go through them, though keep in mind that this number fluctuates a lot based on the enemies, the layouts, and a bunch of other things. This Postgame Dungeon is 15 floors long, and it's luck-based. The threat isn't even the enemies themselves. I could deal with them just fine, especially with Helba because she's got max stats because, are you kidding me? She's a hacker, of course she does. No, the problem comes with this. Remember how you could die if you data drain too much? Remember how in dungeons with data bugs it's completely random on when you get data bugs and when you don't? Remember how this dungeon is 15 floors long? Put that all together and you got a 2-hour-long dungeon that could end your run at any time completely based on the enemies it throws at you. Your infection rating will be tested to the very brink, and even then you'll be lucky to get even a moment of slack. This is stupid. This was even a problem in the last story dungeon of the game, but I managed to get past that one because it wasn't 15 floors long. And who knows? Maybe it was because I got lucky in that one. That just means both of these dungeons are terrible. By the end of my 3rd attempt, I quit. I gave up. I tried, in total, 4 to 5 hours on this stupid dungeon, in the same rooms, over and over again, only to be denied because of terrible RNG. I heard that if you cap out Kite's level, that also helps, but even that isn't guaranteed. And like hell am I going to spend an additional day grinding just to have a slightly bigger chance at an already bullshit dungeon? No, I said fuck it, went on YouTube and got the last cutscene from there. Excuse the bad quality, but this is the best I could do. Fuck this dungeon. So once we totally and legitimately get to the bottom, we find the boss waiting for us, a guardian with a cat model player stored within it. Elk immediately sees that player as Mia and the fight begins. Upon defeat, Mia does return in a genuinely sweet scene, though her memories are almost completely gone. The three of them go through basically the exact same meeting they had in the first game, with Elk happily gating out with his best friend returned to him, resolving to always stay by her side and help her recover her memories. We get one final congratulations from the Dot Hack team, and that's officially the ending of the game, the final epilogue. So, what do I have to say about this game? Or even, what do I have to say about the series as a whole? Well, I love it. And part of what I worry about upon looking back on this whole video series I made is that I gave it too much flack and I came across as disliking it. I really don't, and the only reason I'm so harsh is because I love it so much. I want to see it improve. I want to see where things fall short and where things really hit the mark. And I want you guys to maybe see those same things and appreciate the good parts even more upon knowing about all the negative ones. I like to think that from picking apart something, other people could maybe learn how to make it better, or create something original and better, while keeping past creations they've seen in mind. Maybe pointing out flaws in a game will help people see it in other games. And maybe that'll even get aspiring game developers thinking about what works and what doesn't work. Maybe in talking about the potential in writing, what is a good character or a good plot, it'll inspire other people to write more. That's why I'm always going to point out what is good and bad in detail, because I want to see how we could all learn from this experience. Also, it's a chance for me to vent about petty bullshit. To quickly summarize how I feel about Quarantine, I think it falls a little flat on making the final boss feel like a threat. The last and post-game dungeons are very badly designed and depend on sheer luck, and the story regarding Aura, Morgana, and Herald can be very confusing, and could have used some more fleshing out. On the more positive note, the game is still great fun to play, the other dungeons you go through are loads of fun and are properly balanced, and to speak on the series as a whole for a bit, the characters are so strong. They're rich, fun characters that actually feel like players with their own lives and goals. Like actual people I could meet in an MMO. The ways you can learn more about them and see their lives change, see them get more attached to you and see how they feel about you and everything, it's just so good. And while the message could have been so much more in-depth, I feel like the theme of motherhood, birth, death, creation, and destruction, they're all interesting themes that bring themselves out at least decently. I just feel like it could have been taken much further. To risk getting onto a more personal level, my hopes for this video series in general is that newcomers and curious folks get interested in the franchise and jump into the series. Not only that, but maybe appreciate the original quadrilogy, which in my opinion is a fantastic, if flawed, series of games. From the messages I've gotten and the comments you guys have given me, it sounds like my mission was a general success, and I couldn't be happier. Every time you guys tell me that you got into the series or that you picked up Last Recode because of me, it means a lot. It really does. Major props to all those crazy folks that even started watching Sign and buying IMAX games. Though let me just apologize in advance for the huge amounts of money you're about to spend. And no, what you're seeing is probably not going to get any cheaper. So, after iMac, where else is there to go? Well, the obvious answer is over to GU, where you want to watch Roots in advance, but that isn't the only thing to do. On top of the things I've already mentioned in the retrospective, there's a few more sources of media that actually do contribute to the, I guess, lore of the franchise. There's .hack 0, a novel series that depicts Sora's life between Sign and the games, which also got discontinued. There's .hack Analysis, which is an art book with additional information, which was never translated. Oh, okay, there's Legend of the Twilight Bracelet, the manga, not the anime. That one isn't canon and it's bad. The manga's not bad. There's also a few extra episodes of Sign that I intentionally didn't talk about. One is an extra episode that's centered around Mimiru and her origins, while the other is a really big celebration after everything's been said and done, like a big party between every character in Sign and iMac. I don't know how canon it is, but it's still fun to watch everyone just hang out and relax after all the shit they went through in the games and anime. And so this retrospective comes to a close. Everyone that we lost is now back, the wave is dealt with, Aura is born and looking over the new world, and Elk is finally happy for once. Until GU, where his life is gonna come crashing down. See you next time!